But my next guest is someone I've been really looking forward to talking with. Never thought I'd get the chance to do that in my life, actually. He's one of the names in mindfulness and meditation. He's coming to Minneapolis in about 12 days, and we have him here. He is Dr. Jon Kabat-Zinn, founding executive director of the Center for Mindfulness in Medicine, Healthcare, and Society at the University of Massachusetts Medical School. Welcome, Dr. Kabat-Zinn.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
It is wonderful to have you on. All right, there's so many things I want to ask you, but let's first, for those out there who don't necessarily really understand what mindfulness is, how would you describe it to them?
Well, the simplest way to describe mindfulness is to say that it's pretty synonymous with awareness. It's just another word for awareness, but it means really full awareness, so an awareness that holds anything and everything. And that can be, you can cultivate your capacity to basically inhabit that quality of awareness.
Well, and
that's where the practice of meditation comes in.
Right. And so with meditation, you're really supposed to just focus inward, focus on the breath, try to not let kind of that monkey brain take over?
Well, yeah, but it's very easily misunderstood. So that if you say it that way, that not let the monkey brain take over, you're setting yourself up for failure because the monkey brain isn't going to listen to anything that whoever decides to sit down and meditate is going to be saying. So it's more a question of not letting the mind's natural activity to go here and go there distract you, so to speak, from your intention to simply be in the present moment. Then, of course, it's going to wave it's like the ocean. It will wave all the time. But if you learn how to drop into awareness, then you can be aware of what the mind is doing without being caught by it.
Oh, that's a really good differentiator there. You are known for creating mindfulness-based stress reduction. It's offered in hospitals and health maintenance organizations really around the world. How would you describe that?
Well, it's an 8-week clinic in the form of a course that's designed to teach people how to take better care of themselves, starting from whatever situation and condition and medical, issues they find themselves with, and moving towards greater levels of health and well-being by training in various ways of cultivating mindfulness at the level of the body, at the level of the emotions, at the level of thought, and at the level, if you will, of your whole being. It really turns out that it sounds simple and it sounds almost like, what? What could really be of any value to human beings? And it turns out it's one of the most powerful ways in which human beings can influence their own lives in terms of physical well-being, emotional well-being, and relational well-being, I would say, relationship with your family and other people, and also your relationship to the planet. So it sounds very simple, but it's actually not so easy to cultivate, but its implications are enormous. And I think that's one of the reasons we're seeing so much buzz around mindfulness now. Some of it's really hype, but the deep underlying impulse for it is because there's so much suffering and madness in the world, and this is a way to actually attenuate the madness, not be so caught by it, and then transform the suffering into really a new way of being in relationship with all of life, including the hard stuff, but also not losing touch with the beauty in life.
Yeah, well, very well said. I'm talking with Dr. Jon Kabat-Zinn. He calls himself a scientist, and his life has really been a fusion of science and art. He's one of the voices when it comes to mindfulness, meditation, and really reducing stress in your life using those things. What you describe, Dr. Kabat-Zinn, it just sounds lovely. It sounds like this wonderful thing to attain or always, I guess, be practicing throughout life.
Yeah.
It isn't easy. So what would be step one for a regular person out there?
Well, you mentioned breathing, and so let me say that, as with the American Express credit card, it's very useful because you can't leave home without it. So in a certain way, a great many meditative practices begin with breathing. But then that gives people the wrong impression that it's really about is using your breath to control your mind. And it's not about trying to control or, stop your thoughts or anything like that, or attain some deep state of relaxation. Those things may all happen, and certainly the deep state of well-being can develop within you, but it's more about allowing yourself to be as you actually are and recognizing how much larger that is than your little narrative about who you think you are or what's wrong with your life at this moment. And so it does confer an enormous amount of freedom to actually liberate ourselves from some of the prisons of our own self-creation and the sort of stresses of our lives, so to speak, which are enormous, and find a new way to navigate life that provides greater meaning and sense of connection and well-being from moment to moment. So just to be very clear about it, it's not trying to achieve any special state, but it's much more recognizing that your being alive is already insanely special, so to speak. The fact that you can breathe, the fact that the breath takes care of itself without your having to remember it, and the same for your heartbeat and thousands of other physiological, expressions of life. So to cultivate awareness rather than simply be lost in thought all the time is no longer a luxury. It's becoming an absolute necessity in this very increasingly fast-paced digital world that is full of just infinite self-distraction.
Yes, it is. I love how you said...
with, everything, sort of texting and everything else. There's almost no time for us to actually live anymore. We're turning into human doings rather than cultivating the being element of being human.
And I love what you said. Our lives are already insanely special, but people really lose touch with that.
Yeah.
Many years ago, I was diving into this whole world of mindfulness and meditation, and someone gave me one of your books, and that was really my first entree into reading about it. Yeah, and then I went to a local Zen center here in Minneapolis and studied it a little that way.
Beautiful. You have some wonderful Zen teachers in that area.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. And I can't say I'm always a faithful practitioner, but I really do try to live with it. But I've asked...
You know what I want to just say about that, if you don't mind me interrupting you?
Go ahead.
This is another thing that people get the wrong impression about faithful practitioner and like I'm a bad meditator because I never remembered to do it. I know my life would be so much better. But the fact of the matter is that every time you remember, that's good enough, and that you can do it really moment by moment and not give yourself some big story about how you're a bad meditator. It really all hinges on your willingness to sort of, when you're washing the dishes, are you present for even one dish? If you're taking, walking down the street, can you be present with one step? When you're talking with somebody, can you actually be present and hear what they're saying, or are you just thinking about what you're going to reply cleverly? And if you do that, then you're actually cultivating mindfulness in the most powerful way because it's really not separate from life itself.
Exactly.
And if we don't cultivate it that way, then you could sit on your cushion for a very long time. But if you don't understand that the real meditation practice is how you live your life, then there's a certain way in which, again, you're being too hard on yourself in some ways, and also discouraging yourself from doing the meditation practice because you're not really remembering what it's about.
Right, which is not supposed to be the stress. I'm going to open up the phone lines here in a bit. 81807 is our text line if anyone has questions for Dr. Jon Kabat-Zinn.
Can I just say one more thing before you do that? And that is that, so it's not about breathing per se, although it can be an incredible ally in cultivating mindfulness because you can bring your awareness to the physical feelings of the breath, sensations in your body, and that always brings you back to the present moment, no matter what's going on. Even if, you're highly stressed or in some kind of, disruptive state, just tuning into the breath is incredibly important. But it's not about the breath. It's about the tuning in.
The tuning in.
The awareness
I like
itself.
that. I like
And
that.
so it could be, the breath could be an object of attention, but it could also be any number of other things, including the look on your child's face
Right,
or,
exactly.
the touch of another person hugging you.
And I'll also share our phone line, 651-989-9226 or 866-989-9226. But first, Dr. Kabat-Zinn, I want to ask one of my colleagues to jump in. She's one of your biggest fans. She's one of our news anchors, Susie Jones, and a longtime media person in our community.
Oh, great. I love the whole idea of coming to Minneapolis because it's such a mindful city.
Well, hopefully Susie will be there at Northrop on November 28th. But I know, Susie, you have some questions for him.
Well, I just wanted to say hello because I am a fan, and I wanted to thank you. I took the Mindful-Based Stress Reduction class at the U several years ago. It was the 6-week class that we take at night, and it was tremendous. And we read from the book Full Catastrophe Living, which I really liked, because that is sort of like what you're talking about with Roshini, is that finding sort of peace in the middle of it all, that you're never going to have a life that's free of catastrophe. Exactly. So anyway, and the book, Wherever You Go, There You Are, because those have been important to me in really hard times that I've had in my life, that I've hung on to those.
Well, I'm thrilled to hear that. Of course, that's why I write them, is for just that.
Yeah.
Well, Susie was so excited, so I wanted her to jump on. Do you have, he's right here, Susie. Do you have a question for her?
Yeah, and I just wanted to say, just for your audience, that I'm coming to help celebrate the 20th anniversary of the university's Center for Spirituality and Healing, Mary Jo Kreisert Center, that is now, 20 years old. And I'm just very excited to be coming and participating in this whole recognition of the incredible pioneering work that center has done, and all the people at the university have been engaged in, and the research that's come out of it. So the University of Minnesota is really, I think, one of the premier places in the country where this kind of work goes on and is making a huge influence, not just in the world scientific and medical community, but also in your own community.
Because you were talking about research and medical healing. That's really what it's all about, isn't it? I think sometimes people think, it's that mumbo-jumbo meditation stuff, but there are real results.
You can't really think that way anymore.
No, because there are real...
Because the science has changed, you see. When I started this in 1979, you could really say, that mumbo-jumbo meditation stuff, but it doesn't really have any real effects. But now we know through the new sciences of neuroplasticity and epigenetics and all the studies that are going on with aging and telomeres at the ends of all of our chromosomes that what looks a lot like nothing, if you stop and meditate, it looks like you're not doing anything, actually has enormous effects on the brain, and how, not just how it, its activity, but also its very structure. So it's the kind of thing that, and the same is true for our genes and gene expression, and which are certainly involved in keeping us healthy and dealing with issues of inflammation and cancer and so forth. So it turns out there are all sorts of things we didn't know about the body until about 10 or 15 years ago that really are extremely convincing around how we decide to live our lives. Is probably one of the biggest factors in our health and well-being on every level. And that was just not known 30 years ago.
Right. Well, when I was taking the class and listening to the tapes, as I have frequently since then, I have taken great comfort, Dr. Kabat-Zinn, just in your voice. You would always say, "Do this until you're comfortable. Make sure your East Coast accent."
That's very sweet.
Yes, very.
You have been
I'm very touched to hear you.
You've been very soothing to me in my life.
Well, vocal behavior is very important, as Susie knows, as a longtime radio person. We're going to take a real quick break and then more. And your questions for Dr. Kabat-Zinn, 81807 is our text line, 651-989-9226 or 866-989-9226 if you have a question or comment for Dr. Jon Kabat-Zinn. Roshini Rajkumar back with you. I'm speaking with Dr. Jon Kabat-Zinn on the Mayo Clinic Newsmaker hotline. If you have any texts or calls for him, give us a ring, 651-989-9226, or text 81807. One texter says, I have one of your CDs, Dr. Kabat-Zinn. Why do I end up in tears when I do one of your sessions?
I have no idea. But
it's that soothing voice that Susie talked about.
You probably have some idea. If you really ask yourself that question, it may turn out that there's something in the practice or in my voice or in the combination with what you're bringing to it is actually touching something, maybe some grief or some sense of loss or sense of possibility for that matter that just brings you to tears.
Susie
There's
Jones, do you have
very
a take
beautiful
on that?
about that?
I mean,
well, I was going to add along the lines of the class, Dr. Kabat-Zinn, part of the class involved a day retreat, where a Saturday,
yes,
where we
day-long
right
day of mindfulness and silence.
Right, and Roshini, he said that last word. I don't know if you caught that. He said, "and silence."
And silence.
So for me, Susie Jones, to be silent from 9 in the morning to 3 in the afternoon.
Chris and I are saying nothing.
And
a lot of people say that.
And the other issue for me personally, and I think for a lot of us, so I can share this, is time. So of course I love to know what time it is all the time. And when I wasn't going to be able to talk from 9 in the morning to 3 in the afternoon, I needed to know what time it was so that I could see when I could talk again. And they covered all the clocks in the room, and it said now. They just wrote the word now across the clocks. And that was almost more painful to me to not talking was to not know what time it was. It's a weird sort of world that we live in where we're locked into time and talking.
Yeah, time is, get into that, Dr. Kabat-Zinn. Why are we so fixated on time, especially Americans are?
Well, yeah, we're totally conditioned everything's by the clock, and we never have enough time. And not all cultures are that way. And I think the digital age, of course, is driving it even more that way. So, we're always on the way to someplace else. And if you sum that over a day, a week, or your life, you'll find that you're never where you actually are. You're always on the way to some better place.
Yeah.
Only that's going to only be your grave. So you might as well wake up to the actuality of this moment is the only moment that we ever have. And if you miss it, then you've missed a significant portion of your life.
Right.
Even though it seems trivial because you're so much in the habit of doing that, we all are, that you could miss all the richest aspects of your own life unfolding because your thinking mind is telling you that you're headed someplace better in some future moment.
And Dr. Kabat-Zinn, I hate to say it, but we only have about a minute left with you. But I have another text question that I want to get in. This listener says, what does the doctor think about telemedicine, ? Lack of human contact, touch, and connection, ?
If the people on both ends of the telemedicine are mindful, and I know doctors who actually do this and do it mindfully, then, obviously it's better to be in the same room. But if you're in the wilds of northern Canada or something and the nearest doctor is 200 miles away, it's really wonderful to be able to be in touch with somebody using the technology like that. But it all has to do with, you can be mindfully in touch with the technology or you can be mindlessly in touch with the technology, and that's a choice. And we can, again, exercise that muscle in every aspect of our daily life and grow ourselves into the life that's really ours to lead at all moments, and yet we're always missing it, zooming through the moments to get to better ones at some fictitious future time, usually.
Thank you, Dr. Kabat-Zinn, for all of you've done for me. I just wanted to say that before the
I
wraps up.
That
Very
so
nice. Well, if you want to see him and hear his voice, that great voice, November 20th, 7 p.m., Northrop Auditorium, register at z.umn.edu/JKZ. Dr. Jon Kabat-Zinn, it has been just a thrill and a pleasure for me and Susie to talk with you today. Thank you so much. Good luck on the 20th. Thank you. And I will put now up around my house. I really appreciate it. Thank you. And when